alternative thing is for us.
I'll say, okay, could you just add these
Can
questions?
everybody please just mute themselves when they come into the room and only allow the speaker to talk?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our session. We are here to discuss the challenges and possible solutions for issues pertaining to unemployed learners. Tracy McLennan is a director for B Consult and have been in the skills development space since 2007. They are accredited with various CETAs and have a sound understanding of the BEE. They do have offices in Cape Town, Joburg, and Durban. So Tracy, thank you very much for starting this whole conversation on WhatsApp. Over to you.
Oh, thanks so much, Morena. And thanks everyone for joining. I was saying to Morena just before we started that I'm so excited to actually be having this conversation because I think we can move forward with it. Just to give you a little bit of context to how we led up to this. As Morena says, we're a training provider, and I've just been finding that since COVID, and I'm going to put it down to since COVID, we're just having a lot of problems with specifically unemployed learners, with quite a few disciplinary issues. And I started getting the feeling that we were being held ransom by learners, that learners were dictating to us how and what we should be doing. So especially one of the last learnerships that we ran was quite a big one. We went through quite a big recruitment and we had over 1,000 fake doctor's notes. So where we were checking the actual disability and finding that the disabilities were fake. Then we had learners insisting that we paid them the stipend up front before they even started. So, I mean, once they'd signed on the dotted line and we'd explained the whole learnership, then they said they didn't have transport money. So that is when I really put this question out on the groups. And I was, I don't know where do we go from here? And I would say within a couple of hours, definitely by the end of the day, I'd had 72 training providers, either independent training providers or people from companies contacting me and saying this is a real issue. So I knew this was something that we could actually, if we all put our heads together, we could work on. After that, people were quite interested to get going quickly. ASDSA got back to us and said they'll give us this platform and the forum to discuss this and take it further. So and some of the people got hold of me and we decided to have meetings. We set up 2 dates for meetings just to discuss and sort of call them focus groups, just to discuss what were the common issues. And the common issues were common issues. So I just really want this to be an interactive forum. What I'd like to come from this is that we come up with the challenges that are in common, some of the good solutions that we can implement. And then possibly, I don't think we can do it without going through to getting some backup from the CETAs, from the stakeholders, from clients. I've prepared a presentation, a very short presentation, just on what information came from those focus groups. And really, as I said, this is interactive. So if you want to stop me at any time and you want to have a chat, let's just do it. All right, so now. All right, so the problem is multifaceted. We have got learners involved, we've got CETAs involved, we've got the training provider involved, we've got the employer, the sponsor involved, and the employer host involved. So there are quite a few various stakeholders involved in this, which also brings with it its own challenges. So common challenges that we had from unemployed learners: fake doctor's notes for learners living with disabilities, learners on more than one learnership at the same time, learners insisting on stipends being paid for transport before the learnership starts, poor attendance at training and at workplace, non-submission of assignments, hopping from one learnership to another, using learnerships as a stopgap until the academic year starts, college, university, etc. Lack of interest in the learnership, and intentionally failing the interview process with the host employer. I'd just like to get feedback from anybody on the group now. If you could, if I don't know if you want to raise your hand or put it into the chat or just unmute yourself. Are there any other challenges, and what are your, how are you relating to this? Sharon, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I think another thing is multiple learnerships. We've had an issue where, and it was on the same CETA. So we had a learner that was already enrolled in exactly the same learnership at a different company. And when we were trying to enroll the learner, it was blocking us. So they enroll on multiple learnerships so that they can get multiple stipends. And because there's not a unified system, they are drawing multiple stipends. We just happened to pick it up because they were on the same learnership on the same CETA. But if they're on different CETAs, then we can't pick it up because the CETAs are not talking to each other. So that's a very, very big problem.
That is a huge problem. And what I found from that as well is, if you think about it, if a learner is on 3 different CETAs and they're earning a stipend, they're getting almost 10 to 12,000 Rand. Correct. By just being on different learnerships. So why would they want to get employed? Exactly.
So one of the solutions that I think to a learnership is that, and this is just maybe preempting it, is that the collective is that you can only do a learnership once. Once you've done a learnership, you should not be able to go for a learnership, and there should be a proper recruitment process or selection process or pre-assessment process in the whole scheme of things. I think that is very important, and maybe us as the ASDSA can partner with the providers to say, how can we get this done? Maybe we can collectively set up some kind of forum to say, this is the best practice when it comes to learnerships.
Absolutely, Sharon. So what I'm going to do, one of my slides is on how to, what we can do from here. So let's just bring that up again when we move on to that, so that we can actually make a note and then try and find best practice. I see there's some other hands up. Morena, do you want to do the unmuting as we go?
They will be able to unmute themselves.
Hi, good morning. Is this my opportunity?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Morning to all colleagues, and thank you for arranging the session. Just to add on to what the previous speaker had mentioned, I think one of the challenges that we face is that verification process. The fact that it's solely reliant on the CETA does prevent us from getting or stopping these professional learnership hoppers, if I can call them that. We can't even verify before. So at least if we do get somewhat of an access to the system where we can just punch in a learner's ID number and it will reflect whether it's a central one that checks across all the learnerships, or all CETAs rather, or it's just with a specific CETA, and then it will be a training provider's responsibility to then go from one system to the other to check that that particular learner is not on a program. And then also, how do we verify the doctor's letters? Because I think for us, we are, maybe you'd also advise, we are hands tied with regards to calling the doctor or verifying if the learner indeed is a learner with a disability. I'll give an example. In some case, we had one of our clients who operates one of the casinos, where in the end, when they were doing their audit process, because they have an internal medical department, they were able to take the learners through test and find out then that the learner doesn't have a disability. But when the learner came to us, they submitted something that looked like a proper disability note with a disability certificate. So it's a little tricky for us in this front, that how then do we bring interventions as training providers, because if I call and say, hi, please confirm if Nsako is disabled, there's that HR line that is very clear that we can't cross. So I don't know if there's anyone with advice on that. I'd really appreciate that from the session that we are having today. Thank you so much.
That's great. I've put that down. I've also I've spoken to somebody with regard to that, because it would be helpful if we had one system for all SETAs. I don't think we can rely on the SETA to do that. So we're going to have to come up with our own solution. But I've made a note of that as well about verifying doctor's notes. Thanks for that. Next person.
Hi, thank you so much. It's Janine Topping. Just something I wanted to share with everyone. I ran 3 learnerships. They were small. There was like 13 and then 7. The 13 one, not a single one completed. It was a disabled under 29. And for every single possible reason that you are putting up and sharing your slide with us at the moment. The second one, I tried something different and I got an 85% attendance. It was such an eye-opener. And I'm going to share something in the chats of something that I took my learners through, bearing in mind they were all disabled, all 29, males and females, okay? And it was this book called Think, Learn and Succeed by Dr. Caroline Leaf. She's a Christian neuroscientist. And I realized with the first group, we ponder and we think, how on earth, what did we do wrong? What could we have done differently? And I realized the self-esteem amongst the learners, specifically the unemployed disabled learners, their self-esteem is incredibly low. Really, really, really low. They have caught on to the fact that all these companies want them because of their disability. And I found that my albino learners had the worst self-esteem because they're not accepted by both races. So my facilitator, what she did is that I started the second group, and she then took over from me. And for the first 3 months, it was 1 day a week training. For the first 20 minutes of class, once they had filled in their registers and settled down, she showed them the podcasts by Dr. Caroline Leaf. And I still to this day believe that this is a reason that we got such a huge, excellent attendance rate. These learners all still had to go to the clinics once a month, and they kind of worked around it. Their workplace attendance was also very good. And I honestly believe that by our strategy to build the learner's self-esteem, in these podcasts, Dr. Leaf also takes the learner through how they think, how they learn, how their brain works, all the neural pathways, etc. And this to me was the biggest success. I just really want to share this with everyone because it's what worked for the second time around, because the first time around, I almost lost my accreditation because of these learners. They drove me absolutely insane. So I hope it helps some people. Thank you.
Janine, that's great. Thank you. I'm sure that will help a lot. It's definitely food for thought. Thank you for that. I've made notes of that. And it would be interesting to know if any other training providers end up doing that and actually providing feedback. It would be lovely just to have some stats on that. Is there anybody? Sorry, I can't see from my side. Is anybody else with hands up?
Good morning. It's Wilma Manuel from CETAS Academy. Thank you for this platform. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the ASDSA. They've really helped me in my journey in life. And I would like to speak on behalf of training providers that run learnerships. Literally hundreds of learners have been through our academy over a good few number of years. And we've learned every trick in the trade, where learners are professional students that hop from learnership to learnership, where you get caught with a learner that didn't complete at another provider, then you're dealing with the CETA LMIS, right up to fake doctor's notes. And I called the doctor to verify was that his current sick note that he was issuing, and of course it was all fake. And I'm challenged with learners want to be in the classroom because they enjoy coming to the classroom to learn and being in a school setup or a college setup. But when it comes to the workplace, then I have a lot of negativity towards the workplace. They feel as if they've been used by the companies, or they don't want to, and this is across learnerships, it's not just one particular learnership. Where they don't want to do anything in the workplace, where you've introduced it from induction all the way through, and you keep on emphasizing, even with the evidence collection and collation of workplace activities, there's that negativity towards the workplace. So my thinking, my interpretation of how we can circumvent this is to have a threshold where a learner who's been on a learnership for whatever course it is, regardless of the CETA, there should be a limit, and this should be from national level, where the learners cannot go on to learnerships forever and become these professional students. They're going to make that qualification work for them, whether it be new venture creation. I've had learners that do grass cutting now for the municipality through new venture creation and hygiene and cleaning. So they must be motivated to go and make the qualification work for them, and not become complacent and just think, okay, it's a 9 to 5, let me go there and just attend and come with all these, meet the criteria using fake doctor's notes and whatever. In a previous learnership, I had a student that did the beauty learnership, the full qualification. And once completing with us, she went to another training provider. She did some other course there that was totally unrelated to beauty. And she was enrolled as a disabled student. I couldn't believe what was coming out of her mouth. And I said to her, how did you justify that when you are sitting in front of me as an able-bodied student? So there has to be a threshold where we have to prevent the students from hopping. They must make the learnerships work for them and go and open businesses and go and work in the workplace and make the impression that the company is willing to absorb them. And that's just my 2 cents worth.
Wilma, I must say, I agree with you. This numerous learnerships, they're just becoming professional learners. And there's also I think back in the day, people were going on to learnerships like in wholesale and retail that they actually wanted to get into that industry. Now, I mean, we ran a learnership the other day, and the tourism and the learners went, and then they went into the hotel, and they actually said to the one person actually said, can I have a meeting with the HR? I don't want to be doing this, working in a hotel, and I don't, that's not what I want to do. And I said, well, why are you on the learnership? And the answer was, well, I actually want to be in like an office job in HR. So it was anything to do the learnership, but not to actually get into that particular workplace. And I understand as well, everyone needs a job and everyone needs money, but 100% agree with you. There's got to be a cutoff. All right, there were 2 other hands raised.
Diane was first.
I think it's very important that we put in some kind of, in recruitment, when you're recruiting people, you always look at the person's, what job fits the person correctly. We need to fit in some kind of HR recruitment process for the learnerships, because I've got 2 current workplace integrated learners that are coming from learnerships, and they are both finance people, but they don't want to do finance. They both want to do fashion. And I think this is exactly what the major problem is that learnerships are being done to do something because there's such a high unemployment rate. They are upskilling and overskilling themselves because they can't get into the career that they want to do. And that's exactly where the problem is that learnerships are being done just for the sake of getting that stipend and doing the learnership to upskill themselves, but they're actually not getting to the core of where they actually want to be. And that's where the major problem is as well. It's another contributing factor.
Definitely. There was another hand.
It was Yulaine.
Good morning to the ASDSA team and to the audience. So, like every provider, we also experienced exactly the same challenges. And the approach that we took was being a lot more stringent in our recruitment process. So we don't use words like fake doctor's notes. We use the word fraud, so that they understand that what they're doing is actually illegal. We have accountability conversations with them, but taking it a step further, a step back to the recruitment process, we prefer to recruit individuals against their sweet spot. So we try and understand exactly where their interests lie. You know, is it in the ICT sector? Is it the BPO sector? Is it more administrative? And when we select the candidates and create our databases, we do it specifically against that. And we've found, obviously, because there's more interest in the specific field that we're for the learnership that we're going to place them on, there's a lot more interest. In terms of non-attendance, because they're on another learnership, and they're on another learnership obviously because they want the extra income, we get our clients to agree to a no work, no pay policy. So that completely eliminates the opportunity from them getting additional income from us. We also do have accountability sessions with the individuals, not just with regard to making their submissions on time, etc., but also about their commitment to the process. We help them understand that the document that they're signing, the learnership agreement, is a legal binding document. There's a code of conduct in there for the learner to which they need to adhere. So we take a stringent approach in that way. Then when it comes to the workplace, our workplaces are hectically vetted. We make sure that the environment is conducive to learning. We ensure, and this is absolutely critical, that a mentor is appointed in the workplace at the host site. And this individual is then also accountable to us in terms of reporting absenteeism and that sort of thing. And it also creates an additional tier of accountability for the learner. And then finally, engagement with the host site, engagement with the learner, hearing what their situation is. If there's a death in the family, we request a copy of the death certificate. If there's a clinic visit, we request an absentee note from them in terms of that. So we apply as many lines of accountability so that it makes it more difficult for them to try and get around that. We are always going to get the learners who are going to just abscond, but if you keep an eye on attendance and absconsion is a week. If they're not back in a week, then we start the termination process, start informing them of the termination. So come month end, they don't get that additional stipend. So yeah, that's just a little 5 cents from me.
Thanks, Elaine. I'm just seeing some comments over here in the chat as well. Some employers say they can't apply the no work, no pay rule in learnerships, unfortunately. I am going to get to that slide where I've actually got the challenges that we have from the companies. But that is also a problem, because sometimes when they just want to spend that exact amount for BE or whatever, so it's too much administration. So we'll put that as one of the challenges on how we can get around that with clients, that stakeholders that are prepared to back us on it. It's great, but there are the companies that just say it's too much administration, we just need the points, etc. Okay, 2 more hands raised.
Tracy?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. This is Tracy from Pinnacle Training and Development. And I just really wanted to concur with you, Elaine. We approach the learnerships that we run with our clients and the training providers in a very similar way, in terms of we go through a very stringent recruitment process in terms of suitability, doing our best to try and find out what else these potential learners are doing on the side. As you say, it's not always easy to find out. but that does help to pick up some conflicts as to where they are engaged in other learnerships as well. We also set up a very clear communication process, which includes WhatsApp groups. It includes going through and visiting them regularly, every week or every second week, checking in with them, checking on the notes, all of that. Yes, it is time intensive, which is why we provide the service for employers, because it is intensive. Interfacing with the disciplinary processes and all of that. But I have to say, we're also now running our second learnership this way. And we've had a couple of dropouts, but so far it's we're 6 months down the line, and we are at an 80% retention rate, with the learners attending regularly and making progress. So it's heavy going, but it is paying dividends.
And Tracy, are those people with disabilities, or are they just unemployed people?
It's a mixed group. I have to
Okay.
say the learners with the disabilities tend to be the most difficult, because they are, it's sometimes difficult to know, are they really unable to attend class because they're battling with their disability, or are they using their disability as a reason not to attend class? I have to say these are the learners that we find the most difficult to manage.
Well, that's what I'm finding as well. And I think a lot of people are finding people that without disabilities, the unemployed, I generally find we've got a much better response. They actually do want to get into the workplace, etc. It's predominantly, and this also came out from the focus group, where I actually then went back and looked at our own figures, that it was people with disabilities that are giving the most challenges. And as you said, that could be because they really are the challenges, and going into the workplace is just too challenging. But that is really where we are finding the problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad it's not just us.
All right, just with regard to client challenges, what we find with clients, the sponsors, they need the BE points so they don't enforce disciplinary action or terminate as they require the spend. And the clients also lose their SETA funding. So if the SETA is funding a learnership and we discipline a learner in month 2 or month 3, then they are terminated. And even if the client then puts a new learner on, the SETA won't acknowledge the new learner, because that learner wasn't replaced within 21 days. So they lose their funding with regard to that. So that is where, clients are just saying they just don't want, they don't want the challenges. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add to that. All right, and then SETA challenges. SETA withdraw funding if a learnership is SETA funded for a learner that is terminated. SETA's databases are not linked to each other. They allow learners to be enrolled on different SETA learnerships at the same time. And that is, and that becomes a major challenge. And also, I sometimes feel the SETA, we cannot move forward unless the SETA back us up. So we really have to get the SETAs to come on board, and again, not one SETA, the SETAs as a whole. And then training provider challenges. Training providers don't instill discipline in order to keep a client happy, satisfied for BE or SETA funding requirements, because when a training provider is running backwards and forwards to a client saying, you've got to deduct this, or this one we've terminated and this one we've disciplined, etc., it makes the training provider look less competent. So unless, with some clients, yes, the clients will come on board, but with other clients, they can be like, I just want a training provider that takes care of everything, and we don't actually hear any problems. And a lot of times that's when training providers just don't install discipline. Training providers can become the persona non grata, and learners will rather join training providers that just turn a blind eye. We've had that actually been said to us ourselves, saying, oh, but this didn't happen when we were on that previous learnership, and nobody worried. Why are we getting all of these challenges? And then training providers don't have a uniform standard of discipline, so learners play them up against each other. So by uniform standard of discipline, if they don't hand in, or if they don't attend training, if it's 3 days and there's no doctor's note, are we putting in a warning? Are we putting in a warning after day 1 that they've missed and there's no doctor's note? If we have a standard form of discipline where warnings could be issued, or learners could get warnings for not submitting, and then maybe given them 7 days to submit an assignment, an extension if they still don't submit. If we had a uniform that the SETA agreed with, I do think that would go a long way as well. Are there any hands? I can't see from our side. All right, so just going through to possible solutions. Follow disciplinary code so that it is fair should it result in a CCMA case. We would need the SETA to come on board with this, because this is also something that we need to have a fair disciplinary code. A lot of people in the previous focus group said, you know, if we could have a database of learners who consistently don't perform on a learnership, if we could put them on a blacklist with all SETAs and say these learners are really problems, but then how do we come up with the criteria? How do we know what that criteria is? And it's always going to be the same criteria for all the training providers. A blacklist of learners that submit fake doctor's notes for disabilities, as Elaine said, fraud. This is actual fraud. Follow disciplinary code so that it's fair should it result in a CCMA case, although this is fraud. So I can't see a problem if a person is what did I put, the impersonated is prepared to open a case. That again, it's, you know, the doctor or somebody has to open a case there. Yes. And Sako, you've raised your hand. Do you want to speak?
Yes, thank you. I think on that one, is it possible that we also add, well, this is regarding the learners who submit fraudulent doctor's notes, that we also flag those doctors as well. Say we have learners who come with a doctor's letter confirming disability from Dr. Ntsako in Jules, and we see that we've had a trend of 4 to 5 learners. Chances are that particular doctor might be party to the whole process. So we might say we are flagging whoever that comes with a letter from this particular doctor. If you do, please go and find. We're not saying we're not taking you on, but please go and find a second opinion or another doctor who can verify that disability. If there's anything like that, I think that would also be a good idea, because we are only pointing fingers at the learners in this case, but let's also point the role players being the doctors as well. Thank you.
Actually, that's an excellent idea. And then also we've got to find out where do we report these? I mean, do we report these to the SETA? Where is that, you know, where is that going to lie? That responsibility going to lie? Yes, there are 2 participants' hands raised.
I'm going to answer right after, if you don't mind, because I'm the chairman of the ASDSA. It's Sharon. So
all right.
I'm going to give you some solutions to these problems, but finish the slide and then I'll answer. So Janine can carry on.
Okay, great. All right. Then reducing stipend. Okay, so reducing the stipend to the gazetted amount and adding incentives for meeting KPI learnership agreement criteria, example, attendance, submissions of assignments, completion of learnerships, etc. How this discussion came up was, so some companies, a lot of companies will go with the no work, no pay, etc. But you know, what happens then is that also the learners then just attend even less. They'll say, oh, well, now they have no transport money, or there's intimidation of other learners and said, you know what, we discussed reducing the stipend. So the gazetted amount, as I understand it, is 630 Rand 0.57 or something like that for a specific level per week, because it is the learnership, the stipend is only supposed to be covering the transport, and then having that as the amount of the stipend, and then having the fact that they're attending and having the fact that they are submitting on time as incentives, the KPIs. So, because stipends can only be withheld should the learner not attend work without a valid reason. So, you know, you could also come up, you know, if you just withhold part of the stipend, that could also end up in a CCMA case. So we have to get our facts correct with regard to that. The KPI is a good idea. The only thing is it becomes it's very labor intensive. I mean, we've got to then, you know, that amount is going to fluctuate every single month. And is a client going to be happy to be spending so much time on their payroll, especially if they're doing a learnership for 50 to 100 people. Acknowledgement of debt for learners to pay back. That was one of the payback training amount to sponsor company when learnerships are terminated prematurely. So if a learner is disciplined or leaves, I don't think this is legal. Perhaps link in with this relevant CETA to confirm. Also, this should be guided by a contract the learner signs by the client. I'm not too sure if that is possible. Something that we can discuss. And then transgression of a matrix. So a transgression matrix where we actually say 1 day off with no letter, 2 days off, etc. And we have a transgression matrix. A database of learners showing if they are on a learnership to avoid learners enrolling on more than one learnership at a time. I've actually looked at this with a software developer because what I wanted to, I can't see the CETAs or anybody, SAQA or government or anybody doing this anytime soon. And I think we need to get this done. But something where we could put in that ID number, something that all training providers have access to but cannot change. So for instance, you don't want somebody to go in and mess something up, something where we don't have to put the client. So if we've got a client doing a training with, for instance, let's just say ESCOM, you don't want to see the training provider. You want to see the training provider, but you don't want to see the client because we're all competitors as well. So we want to be able to put in the ID number. We want to be able to put in the training provider. We want to put in the start date. We want the end date. So anyone that goes and punches in that ID number can see, oh no, this person is registered with B Consult and they finish in September 2023. Can't use them. So it would have to be a buy-in from training providers. There are always going to be training providers that are not going to use that because they actually don't care. They just want to pay the learner, get the client, etc. But so it's not a foolproof. We've also got to ensure that we're in keeping with the POPI Act with that, but all learners, as far as I understand, sign a POPI Act form when they're starting a learnership. So I don't think that is going to be a problem. But those are just some of the possible solutions that have come up. And I'm really keen to hear everybody else's and then where the, where the responsibility is going to lie with that. Okay, anybody want to add? I think there were hands.
Yes, there's my hand, and I think Janine's hand is up. Janine, do you want to go first?
I'll be quicker than you, Sharon. Thanks.
Yes.
Tracy, I think it's such an amazing idea, and the right people who I think should be doing this is SAQA, and they should be linking it on the NLRD. If the NLRD is all the results are uploaded by the CETAs to the NLRD, then that is the correct platform. But as you say, when will that happen? Because it shouldn't be so difficult because all the learner results are there anyway. Yes, it's a little bit delayed and they're doing all the certificates, checking all the certificates, etc. But one of the things that I would like to suggest for that is that you almost do it like a demerit system. So if the learner messes up once, they get one black mark. Now, when another provider is trying to enroll them and they go, listen, we saw you had this black mark. We're going to give you one more opportunity. Understand that if you mess up, we are going to put it down that you did A, B, and C. So the learner, from a transparency point of view, now they are almost forced to be accountable. So they get 3 black marks and that's it. Now that's it. No provider will ever touch them again. So it's just a suggestion, and where I think from who should actually be doing this, it should be SAQA and it should be on the NLRD.
Janine, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. The only thing is, if it is SAQA and it is an NLRD, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Not in not before I retire. So that is the only thing. Is I think that if we want to do something about it, we're going to have to do something ourselves. I love that idea of the demerit system. I think that's an excellent idea. We've just got to set a criteria, and we've all got to have the same criteria. Because you can't. What we want to do is and that this I'm assuming it's not just to see if somebody's on a learnership, it's actually to see almost like the blacklist if you don't want to take this learner, even if they offer learnership. So yeah, I think we have to look at that. But yeah, good ideas. You've always got good ones.
Thank
So
you.
I have got a couple of ideas as the national chairperson. What I'm hearing is that, so I can tell you for a fact that the National Learner Records Database is 2 years backlogged. And I know that for a fact because I've spoken to the guys recently about our designation updates, and we've been waiting for the updates for a year now. And they said that it's probably going to be at least another year before those designations are going to be updated. And that's just changes to a designation on the SACPA website. So we're not even talking about learner uploads. So to try and put a new system in place and get the red tape for that sorted out, it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that we need a database of current learners, what type of program they're on, and that they are basically a database of clean learners that are on some type of program. So that
Yes.
anybody in the learning landscape can go to one source and say, these are my learners, I'd like to put them onto that place, and say they are now currently on a learnership from this date to this date, and they shouldn't be on any other learner, and I can check that they are clean learners. They're not on any other learner database. Then at the same time, you want to be able to identify delinquent learners. So any delinquent learners, once we've done a complete process, can then have a delinquent learner flagged. Obviously, when we've set up best practices and all of those lovely things, then we can also identify providers that do workplace integrated learning, providers that do training, providers that do learnerships, short skills programs, and all of those, because we're always looking for those types of databases, and nobody's got a complete database of the national footprints. And then we also want to put maybe a list of those delinquent providers, if we have those, which we can start working on. And I don't want to refer to them as delinquent. I find that people want to always hit providers with a stick. It's more a situation of nobody guides the provider properly, because the provider gets their accreditation, and I'm sure Janine can back me up on this. The provider gets their accreditation and then basically gets kicked out the door, and okay, now you're on your own. Unless they have an accreditation specialist or a mentor to guide them. So more a database of people that need guidance, and maybe a database of STFs to guide them. So that's the other thought that I had. But I think that what we're looking at is we need best practices of how to run learnership, short skills programs, discretionary grant programs, mandatory grant programs, funded or unfunded, and we need to start a task team for that as soon as possible. I think that's the first place that we need to start. We need to find out who on this group is prepared to come together with me, and I'm quite happy for the ASDSA to spearhead this, because there's something that I think that we need to get done, because it's something that we undertaken anyway. And I think there's quite a few of us that are showing that we're putting up our hands to do it, and I'll be the first one to put my hand up. Disciplinary codes need to be put in place, and remember, if you are a designated STF, you already sign a code of conduct. So that code of conduct binds you already into a specific, this is what you are supposed to be doing as per that code of conduct, and you can already report people to specific places. So we can discuss that on the task team, and you can already report delinquent whoever's to specific professional bodies. So like, for example, the doctors that are delinquent doctors can already be reported to the professional body for those doctors, and that would be the HPCSA. So we can already start reporting delinquent doctors if there are delinquent doctors. The SDFs, the HR professionals, and the learning and development professionals that we need to have registered or that need to tie into this all need to be on the same platform so that they can access the platform. And we can look at who can develop this. We just need a corporate sponsor maybe that can help us with getting a platform to develop. And the reducing the stipend, I think that's a very good idea, because we're looking at a basic stipend of about 2,648 Rand, and then we can look at the incentive kind of scheme of adding on full attendance, then they get maybe a extra 350 Rand. Adding in all of their, going to site and making sure that they are at their workplace every single day, then they get another portion, and then it adds up to a 3,500 Rand or a 4,000 Rand, which is general stipend totals for most teachers at the moment. The transgression matrix, I think that can be built into a disciplinary matrix. And if we've already got an MOU with SADPP, which we can leverage on to help us with that disciplinary code of conduct. So I think we can definitely work on a nice task team immediately to put together something that we can actually work with, and then share that with all of our members and have a committee that deals directly with all of these specific programs. I don't know what everybody else thinks about this.
Yeah, Sharon, I think that's great. I think if we could just get some guideline or some clear criteria for the transgression matrix, I think that would help us a lot. And then with regard to the reducing the stipends, I think that can definitely work, but then we would all have to be on the same page, because if some training providers are just offering a straight 4,000 and there's nothing involved for them to get that. We've all got to be on the same page with regard to that, because otherwise, where the learners would go.
So our biggest challenge is when the learnership is a paid or funded learnership, it's determined by the CETA. So we would have to go, as the forum, we would have to go to the CETA Forum CEO, who is Elaine Brass, and we would have to have a meeting with Elaine Brass, and we would have to table all of this and say, these are the challenges that we are having. We've come up with some solutions. What do you think about it? We'd like to propose this, but I think we'd have to go with all of our strategies and planning and everything ready, so that we've got not just the problems, but the solutions already. And that way we'd only be able to go with that once we've actually got the task team already formed, as well as the best practices put together, as well as the platform already, like a complete solid proposal. And we would need at least, I would say, 5 proper professionals in the learning and development, HR management, and SDF space. Cheyenne, you've got your hand up. Or is it Shanine?
Shanine. Hi, good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. I joined late, so I'm not sure whether this was touched on, but I just want to ask about the impact of learnerships in terms of the tax incentive. Now, and this is why I think it's vital to have that database, because this is often sold as a package to clients, is that, when you are going to be sponsoring these learnerships, this is the full package and these are the benefits for the employer, for the client. And often that tax incentive plays a huge part, because often at the end of the day, when you add up what you're spending versus what you might be able to claim back, that's very, very attractive to employers.
Clients, yes. And then they use that learnership as their tax break instead of what it's actually meant for, and that is skills development.
Yeah, but besides that, when you have the employees who are committed, and then who then are there after seek to get those allowed, to claim those allowances. Now, if what you're saying is that an employer cannot claim that allowance, may not claim any annual allowance or any completion allowance for a new registered agreement, if a learner who is party to the new agreement has previously failed to complete any other learnership agreement to which their employer or an associate institution was a party to. So if we don't know, if the employer didn't know, or the STP didn't know that this learner failed to complete a prior learnership at the time when these allowances are claimed, and I'm not sure how SARS actually checks up on this, because I know that they're asking for, you've got to have proof of a statement of results and all of that. Correct. So I don't think there's anyone here that can actually speak on behalf of SARS.
Well, I can tell you,
does SARS know? How can they determine whether this learner that the employer is claiming the tax incentive for?
Just remember, SARS can, sorry.
Sorry, it was a mouthful.
SARS can only, so this is another issue, is that SARS will only Or so SARS is like any other audit. So once there's an audit, then they will ask for the documentation. So if you're claiming, and I mean, as most clients do, they claim their tax concession, which means that if a learner is also on more than one learnership, unbeknownst to the training provider, unbeknownst to the company, unbeknownst to anybody except the learner, those 2 or 3 companies are all claiming their tax concession. Because, yeah, which means that SARS are generally doing 3 times 80,000 per learner to the company. It's only if they audit that particular client, and then they would have to audit the other client where the documents are the same and pick it up. I mean, if they audit somebody, they see the documents online. So the government is losing loads of money in tax concessions because learners are jumping from learner to, on learner, which again is just fraud.
Yes. So hence the absolute necessity for a database. Perhaps SARS could be roped in as well. Because you wouldn't know until these are often, I mean, this is always done after the learnership has been completed, when you're claiming within your next tax year, etc. So it's always after the fact. So yeah, definitely big support for that, to get some sort of database going where employees are protected as well.
I noticed that Sylvia Hammond is on this session. I would love to hear what Sylvia has to say, because Sylvia has been around for a long time. If she could just give her 2 cents worth, if you don't mind, Sylvia.
Hi. Yes, I have been around for a long time. There's no doubt about that. Much grey hair. Yeah, I've been following with the most enormous amount of interest. I'll tell you why I was following, and it makes this discussion even more complex in one way. It's not just learnerships where this problem exists. I have a client which has had the most inordinate problem with interns and graduate work experience. So all of the things that you're talking about, plus one, you haven't mentioned pregnancy. So we had an intern that was there for a short time, and then she was pregnant and needed maternity leave. We've had an intern who was there for 1 month, signed all the documents, submitted to CETA, etc. And then she didn't come the second month. And she said, oh, sorry, I'm giving 1 minute's notice. I've got a permanent job. And then there was the graduate who claimed he had completed, but when we tried to get the certificate, he hadn't actually completed. And his friend got upset, and then we lost 2 interns in the process. So there's been this succession of problems, just like the providers are explaining. So it's not only learnerships, it's internships, and it's graduate work experience.
And I can guarantee the trades are probably having similar issues as well.
Agree. So I was thinking, I started to type and then I took it out again, because these are the problems I've sort of identified that are obstacles to a solution. We've got SARS involved, as Janine said, from a tax perspective. That was a good point. We've also got the DHET involved because they gazette the requirements. Then we've got Department of Employment and Labour as well, because they are responsible for the national minimum wage, and that Annexure 2 to that document sets out the limits that should be paid based on credits achieved.
And UIF that you've got to pay for learners as well.
Exactly, 100%. So, and we've got the QCTO, which is supposed to be setting the requirements of the qualifications. And on the chat, I added the information. There is an issue for SAQA. You know, SAQA, when they had a massive reduction, I think we're talking gosh, it's about more than a year now, I think. I have the minutes. I'll get them all out and send it to you. The problem for SACWA is that their funding and their manpower, the people at the staff have been literally halved.
Yes, they went through
And
retrenchment last year.
and the NLRD is part of that, in that it's much reduced in the service it can provide. And it was also decided, excuse me, as I understood, that no longer would there be this pass the parcel of information. The provider reports into the CETA, and the CETA reports to wherever, and then it finally ends up at the NLRD. So instead of having the same information passed from pillar to post, there would be a more of a requirement to keep the information where it was. I can't understand why we can't interlink the databases. So sorry, that was just to say the problem is very, very large. And I was thinking, my suggestion would be, should this rather be tabled at a more central forum like NEDLAC? Because I think it's big enough, yeah. So that's my input. I'm not sure if it's helpful.
Well, I had already discussed with our exco that we, and Morena and myself are going to be having a meeting about this, that we are going to be engaging with all of those role players in any way, including the CETA Forum CEO, because I think the CETA Forum CEO needs to be in on this discussion with regards to all of these issues. So it's apprenticeships, graduate programs, interns, bursary programs, learnership, short skills programs. What's the new program that QCTO is running now? It's they've got occupational certificates and past qualifications. So they're going to have all sorts of issues with all of those kinds of programs. And NEDLAC and BUSA were the two organizations that we wanted to approach to discuss how we could actually bring the entire landscape together with regards to a number of issues that we are experiencing in the skills development landscape. And this is the way that we need to actually engage, because this is a massive problem. So,
can I make an additional sort of wild brainstorm solution? It occurred to me, listening to everybody, and the complexity of what ASDA will have to be, the ASDSA will have to be involved in the consultation. Is it not the requirement that instead of having all of this administration separated amongst all of the CETAs, should there not be one central administration for all of the things you mentioned, all of the learnerships, etc., for all of those qualifications? Shouldn't we?
I agree. There should be one.
Yeah.
Because then we can monitor it a lot better.
Yeah. Well, you'd be able to find out this. The main problem is this professional learnership shopping. So you can only solve that if you've got all the information in one place.
Yes, that is correct. That is
okay.
Correct. Okay. All right. I am going to. I just want to ask of everybody out in the forum if there's anybody that would like to. And is there any more of the presentation to still go?
No, that's the end of the presentation. So it really just to discuss the solutions, where it's going to lie, who's going to take responsibility. But I think we've actually covered that. So I think it's going to be up to the task team, as you said. And then we have a few solutions, as well as what Sylvia has mentioned, and then just to take it further from that, I think the mostly is that training providers just really want to see some action. They want to see it going further, so that whichever way that's going to be, that we can actually just move forward on it. But that's me. That's all of it from me. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tracy. I really appreciate it. And just as a matter of interest, if anybody wants to volunteer for our task team, can I put a request out right now to see if anybody would like to be on our task team?
Yeah, I would.
Sharon, I'm happy to assist you now. I've just submitted my thesis, so I have time. I'm happy to do writing up for you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sylvia. You would be a great asset to our task team. I will be volunteering myself. I'm sure Morena will be one of the people on, and Tracy, I'm assuming you would be also one of the task team.
Yeah,
Great.
I would too.
Okay, great. If anybody else would like to volunteer their time, I think the task team is a very necessary task team for us to put together. I would need an HR professional as well. I am somewhat in the HR space as well, but I am looking with somebody that's got some serious legal background. Okay. All right, Morena, can I hand over to you?
Thank you.
Yes, I think this was a very valuable session. Thank you, Tracy, for starting this whole thing. Or item, as they want to say. I think it's a huge problem for all the providers out there, but also, you know, for companies, because we as companies also losing out there. We will take this up further. We will send you, obviously, well, we're going to place in WhatsApp the the link for this recording, and then also on the YouTube channel, if you want to go and have a look there. We will also make available, the questions that was posted in the chat box, so we can take it in up further. If there's anybody else who wants to participate in this whole, in the group that we're going to start, please add it here. I think let's give it 2 minutes more, and then we close down. But thank you very much, Tracy, for your time, and Angelique for setting this up.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks, Morena, and thanks, Angelique. And I would say it's a pleasure, but I really wish we didn't have to do it. I wish things just worked without us having to face all these challenges.
Thank you, everybody. I have got quite a few names now. I will be in touch with all of you. Thank you.
If you would like to gain CPD points for this session, please click on the link that is in the chat box now to gain 1 CPD point for this session.